What's up guys, MizzoFrizzo here, and I am very excited to bring you what is an updated version of my how to create a weapon system with simulated physics pickups in Unreal Engine 5 tutorial. It's a little bit of a mouthful. This tutorial is massive. We are going to look at creating a one weapon system with simulated physics, and then we are going to change that into a two weapon system with primary weapons and secondary weapons. And then finally, I will also show you how to change that into a weapon types system so that you can have an inventory of weapon types, such as one type of pistol, one type of shotgun, one type of assault rifle, and as a bonus I'm going to show you how to alter animations and animate swapping weapons and firing your weapon and aiming down the sights as well. Now just before we get started guys, a quick word from my sponsor. As per usual guys, this Unreal Engine 5 tutorial is brought to you by you, my generous subscribers and viewers who have been so supportive over the past 12 months or so. If you find this video to be of any use or value whatsoever, please hit like and subscribe, and if you're so inclined, please do consider making a small donation to the channel via my Patreon. Link is in the description. I do also have some very exciting news for you guys. I have created a Discord. It is called MizzoFrizzo, and the first 150 people to sign up for a membership on my Patreon will receive lifetime access to MizzoFrizzo, even if you immediately cancel your membership. So with a one-time payment of $10, you will be made a permanent legacy member of my Discord. I will send you an invite link via Patreon and we'll get you onboarded and you'll be a permanent member of MizzoFrizzo with just one payment of $10. Do jump on this guys if this interests you, because I will not be extending this offer. It will only be offered to the first 150 people who sign up via Patreon for that $10 membership. But without further ado guys, let's jump into this tutorial. Alrighty guys, now all I've done is created a fresh project using the third person template, and FYI I am using Unreal Engine 5.4. I also recommend that you use the latest version of the engine available to you. And now I am doing this in a third person template, but everything that I show you in this tutorial will be applicable to any kind of game, be it third person, first person, or top down. Any kind of game that you're making, I am basically just showing you the spawning logic and attaching these weapons to the character's skeletal mesh. So all that being said, we'll get started, and the first thing we're going to do is head on over to the Unreal Marketplace to download some free asset packs. And the asset pack that I want you to find is this one. It's called Military Weapons Silver. It is not the highest quality assets that you'll find, but it is free, although I have heard reports of this asset pack not being free everywhere. For example, I've heard that this is not free in Australia, and if this asset pack is not free for you, then I will give you an alternative in a moment. But that being said, let's hit Add to Project. And if you don't see your project here because you're using an incompatible version of the engine, what you can do is search for your project here and click Show All Projects, and your project should appear. You can select your project and then select the most recent compatible version, which is probably going to be 4.27, and hit Add to Project. If Military Weapons Silver is not free for you, then you can find this one, FPS Weapon Bundle, but just do be aware that this asset pack does not come with animations on the weapons or particle effects and sounds and that kind of thing. So anywhere in this tutorial where we are applying animations to the weapons and the particle effects and whatnot, you will have to source those from somewhere else. So if this is the one that you're going for, you'll just hit Add to Project, you'll search for your project, click Show All Projects, select your project, and then select the most recent compatible version, which is again probably going to be 4.27, and hit Add to Project. You'll know these have added to your project because you'll see a couple of new folders down here, namely FPS Weapon Bundle and Military Wep Silver. And as I said, I'm going to be using Military Weapon Silver for the purposes of this tutorial. So I'm going to head into Military Wep Silver and Weapons. And we're going to start off by just making a one weapon system, which we will then expand upon and turn into a two weapon system. And then I will show you how to make a weapon type system. So we're just going to use pistols A to start off with. I am going to first Control C the name, pistols A, and then I'm going to open up this skeletal mesh. And the first thing we want to do is create a static mesh. Because we don't want to use skeletal meshes for our simulated physics pickups. We don't want to spawn a bunch of skeletal meshes around the level. We can use a simplified version of this, which is just a static mesh of this weapon. And this weapon pack does not come with static meshes. So what we can do is open up this skeletal mesh and then click Make Static Mesh at the top here. And I'm just going to find that same folder that it was in, Military Wep Silver and Weapons. And I'm just going to paste the name pistols A and put another underscore here and just call this pistols A static mesh. Hit save. Now I can close this and you'll see here that we've created this static mesh asset right here. We can open this up. And what we need to do here is give this some collision, because we cannot simulate physics on something that does not have any collision, and this does not. So what we need to do is click up here on collision and just add box simplified collision. And you'll see that this has just created a box collision around the static mesh like so. That is literally all we need to do in here. We can save this and close this. And now what we can do is go ahead and start creating the parent classes for our weapon pickups and our weapon blueprints. So what I'm going to do is just inside the content folder is right click and create a new folder, and I'm just going to call this underscore project. And I like to put an underscore here because it just means that it comes up at the top of the list right here. And inside underscore project, I'm going to create a new folder and call it props. And inside of props, I'm going to create a couple of more folders. I'm going to call one weapons and one called pickups, like so. And inside of weapons, what we might do is create our base class and a couple of enumerations, but we're not going to mess with the base class just yet. We're just going to create it. So what I'm going to do is right click and go to blueprint and blueprint class, create a new blueprint class, or you can just click blueprint class up here. And what we need to do is find a skeletal mesh component. So in all classes here, if I just search skeletal mesh, under here, under actor component, you'll see skeletal mesh component. And so this is basically going to be a component that we add to our character. So skeletal mesh component under actor component, and hit select. And let's just call this BP underscore weapon master. This is going to be the parent class of all of our weapons. And while we're here, let's create a couple of enumerations as well. So we can right click and go to blueprint enumeration. I'm going to call this one enum underscore fire mode. And I'm going to hit Control D and duplicate this one. And I'm going to call this one weapon type. And this is going to be for our weapon type system that we're going to do later on. I'm also going to duplicate this again, and I'm going to call this one weapon name. This is going to be for our blending of animations. So it'll be a specific name for each type of weapon. So let's open up weapon name and add an enumerator. And all we're going to have at the moment is a pistol. So let's just add pistol. Actually, let's add one more enumerator, and I'm just going to drag it to the top here, and I'm just going to call it unarmed, like so. Save and close that. Let's open up enum fire mode and add two enumerators, and let's just call them semi-auto and whoops and full auto. Save and close that. And weapon type, now this is going to be for later on, but let's just open this up and add 4, and let's call the first one unarmed. Let's call the second one pistol. Let's call this one SMG. And let's call this one assault rifle. So once again, we're going to use this later on. This is not really relevant to the whole pickups and spawning of blueprint logic, but we will add this later on and we will be able to spawn a weapon in each slot. So this will kind of be like an inventory where you can hold 1 pistol, 1 SMG, and 1 assault rifle. But yeah, we'll look at this a little bit later on. So let's leave this folder for now and go into our pickups folder, and let's right click here and create a new blueprint class, and it's just going to be of type actor, and this is going to be BP underscore pickup master. And we are going to make a child of this for our weapon pickups. So, but before we do that, let's open up BP Pickup Master and change a few things in here. So this is going to be the parent class of all of the pickups in the game. Item pickups, weapon pickups, whatever. This is the parent class of all of the pickups in the game. And first we want to add a static mesh. So click add in the components tab and add a static mesh. And let's just call this pickup object. We can drag pickup object onto the default scene root and replace the root so that this static mesh is the root of this actor. And we can also add a sphere collision. This is going to be called pickup radius. Whoops. Pickup radius. And this is going to be the radius at which we can pick up overlap with this actor and interact with it. So with pickup radius selected, let's change the sphere radius to something like 100, and that should be good for now. And the pickup object we need to set as something so that we can give it some properties that will be inherited in the child classes. So select the pickup object, and over here, the static mesh, what we can do is just find a cube. Just any old cube should do. There's others that are kind of huge and will make it hard to see your pickup radius. So if you just select this one, yeah, it doesn't really matter what you put here. But like I said, we're just putting a static mesh here so we can give it some properties to inherit in the child classes. The first thing we can do with pickup object selected is search for tick and disable start with tick enabled. We don't need tick on this. And we can also search for physics, and we can check simulate physics here. So what I was saying about our pistol needing collision to be able to simulate physics, if this pickup object that you've selected here doesn't have any collision, you will not be able to check simulate physics. So if this is grayed out for you, just make sure that you choose a static mesh that has collision. You could even just set this as your pistol static mesh for now if you really wanted to. Let's also check mass here and change the mass to 60. And let's change the linear damping and the angular damping to 0.25. And we can hit compile and save and close this. That's all we really need to do in here for now. And then we can right click on this and create child blueprint class. And let's just call this BP underscore pickup, BP underscore weapon pickup. So this will be the parent class of all of our weapon pickups. So this one will be specific to all of our weapon pickups, and anything that we put in here will be inherited in all of its children, which will be the different weapon pickups, like a pistol pickup, assault rifle pickup, blah, 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 blah. So let's open up BP weapon pickup, and let's add a few variables in here. So we can come down here to the variables section of my blueprint and add a variable. And the first one that we can put here is weapon to spawn. And this is going to be a class reference to our weapon master. So if we search for weapon master in here and find our BP weapon master, we can select this one and make it a class reference. So basically, if we compile this so that we're able to see the default value over here, what this will allow us to do is pass through a reference to a specific weapon blueprint. So when we interact with this weapon pickup, we will pass through a specific weapon blueprint to spawn on our character. And just before we move away from making changes to the weapon pickup master, let's add a blueprint interface for interfacing with this object and picking up this weapon to spawn. So in my underscore project folder, I am also going to right click and create a new folder and call it interfaces. And inside interfaces, I'm going to right click and go to blueprint, blueprint interface. And so basically this is an alternative to casting. It allows us to basically share functions between different blueprints that you don't want to have dependencies on. So but I won't go into that too much more than that, but let's just create a blueprint interface and let's call it BPI underscore interact. You'll get a better idea of what this is doing as we go ahead and implement all of this. So we can open up BPI interact and you'll see the first thing it prompts you to do is rename the first function here. So let's rename this to interact, and let's also give this function an input, and the input, let's just call it character picking up. And this will be an object reference to whatever kind of character you're using. So I'm using the third person template. If you're using a different character, you're going to find your character's blueprint and just make it an object reference to your character's blueprint, like so. So we're going to pass this through so that it knows who's picking it up. We can save this and close this, and then let's go. Actually, we won't add that interface to our weapon pickup. We're going to add it to our pickup master. So then we're going to override it in the child classes. So open up your pickup master and go to class settings. And over here, you'll find interfaces, implemented interfaces, and we can add our BPI interact here to implemented interfaces. You'll see nothing has changed here, but it has added our BPI interact over here under interfaces in my blueprint. And so now that this is here in the parent class, we can go back to our weapon pickup and you'll see it's here in interfaces. And what you can do in the event graph here is you can either right click on interact and click implement event, or you can simply double click on this interact and it will spawn this event interact from BPI interact right here, like so. And basically when we interact with this object, we are going to call a function in the character, which is spawn weapon, and we're going to pass through the weapon to spawn over to our character. So actually we just need to create that custom event in the character. Let's go to our third person blueprints and open up BP third person character, and then down here in some empty space I'm going to right click and create a custom event, and I'm going to call this spawn weapon. It's actually spawn weapon slash pickup, because we might actually drop a pickup as well if we already have a weapon. But let's just call it spawn weapon, and then I'm going to select this and I'm going to give it a couple of inputs. The first input is going to be weapon to spawn, and this is going to be a class reference to our weapon master, BP weapon master class reference. So again, this is where we're going to pass through this weapon to spawn, is when we call that event in our character. So still in our character here on spawn weapon, I'm going to add one more input, and I'm going to call this the pickups location. And basically I'm going to spawn the pickup down. When we drop a weapon, it's going to replace the weapon that we're picking up sort of on the ground. And this is going to be a vector. Now, this isn't the only way to do this, and I'll show you a different way. I'll show you two different ways of, spawning the pickup in a certain at a certain place. Like I'll make it drop down in front of us at first, and then I can show you this pickups location one as well. So now that we've created this custom event in our character, what we can do is we can call it on event interact inside of our weapon pickup. So when we interact with this object, it will call this event, and this event will call the spawn weapon in the character. So if you drag off of character picking up right here, you should be able to call the spawn weapon custom event that we've just created. And then the weapon to spawn here is going to be the weapon to spawn variable that we created. And here for pickups location, what we can do is just get actor location, and we can just pass through the actor's location for the pickups location like so. And then once we've called that, we want this pickup on the ground to just disappear, so we can just drag off of here and destroy actor like so. That is basically all of the logic we need in here. This is totally set up now, the BP weapon pickup, so we can compile and save and close that. And then in our pickups folder, the BP weapon pickup, what we can do is we can right click on that and create child blueprint class of that. And this is just going to be BP underscore pistols A pickup, just to give it the same name as the mesh, pistols A pickup. And we can open up pistols A pickup, and we can just change this pickup object to the static mesh of the pistol that we created. So pistols A static mesh, and then that is basically it. We basically created our pickup class. We have the function, we have the code there for when we interact with it, and now it even looks like a pistol with simulated physics and has a pickup radius on it. So just to demonstrate, if I take this pistol pickup and put it out in the world like so, just going to rotate a little bit so we see it fall down. If I hit play now, you'll see that pistol falls to the ground, and that is literally a simulated physics pickup. That is a blueprint that is in the world. It has physics enabled on it, and you can't tell at the moment, but when I overlap with that pickup radius, I am able to interact with that object. So we can set up that interact sort of overlap right now, and what we can do is we first need to create an enhanced input for this. So because I want to be able to hold E, for example, for half a second and interact with this object. So what I'm going to do is go to my third person and input folder, and right here in input actions, I'm going to right click and go to input and create a new input action. Let's call this IA underscore interact. Open this up. And what we're going to do is create a new trigger. So we'll add a trigger, and I'm going to change the trigger to hold, and then I'm going to drop down this index, and I'm going to change the hold time threshold to 0.5, and I'm going to check is one shot. So basically this will make it so I have to hold this button for half a second, and then it will only fire off one time because we've checked is one shot there. And that's all we need to do in here. We can save this and close this, and then go back out into our input folder and open up IMC default and drop down mappings here. I'm going to add another mapping. I'm going to select IA interact for that mapping, and then I'm going to drop this down and I'm going to click this little keyboard icon, and I'm going to press E on the keyboard to set this as E, like so. Now you could add another action mapping to this input mapping and make one, for example, for a controller, but I'm just going to set this to E. So I can save this and close this now. And if I go back to my characters blueprint, just above spawn weapon here, what I'm going to do is right click and find IA interact, my enhanced action events, IA interact. And this is what's going to fire off when we hold E for half a second. And all we want to do here is get overlapping actors. And I'm going to change the class filter here to be a filter of the pickup master. So I can find BP underscore pickup master and drag off of this array here and get a copy. And I'm going to leave this index as 0. So what this is going to do is get the first overlapping actor of type BP pickup master. And I'm going to use this as my target for my BPI interact message, like so. So this is just like a cast, and this is my object reference for that cast. It is the first overlapping actor of type pickup master. So when we press this, it's basically going to try and find the first overlapping pickup object in our game, and the character picking up is going to be a reference to self. So we're going to pass through a reference of this character to our interact function that we're calling here. And if you recall, if we go back to our weapons pickup, this is passing through the character picking up, so that then we can call back to the character to call the spawn weapon function and pass through the weapon to spawn, like so. So when we interact with something, it will call this, which will call this on our character, pass through the weapon to spawn, and then we know what to spawn right here. So that's basically the logic there for interacting. And we will go on to finish off our spawn weapon logic here. But first, what I want to do is go to our weapon master class, and we're going to basically flesh that out a little bit and add some variables to our weapon class first. So let's go to our weapons folder and open up BP Weapon Master. And the very first thing we can do in here is just start adding a bunch of variables. So let's first add a variable and call it damage of type float. Let's add another variable and call it range, also of type float. Let's do weapon type. And this is going to be the enum weapon type that we created. It's kind of stopped typing there. Enum weapon type. Let's duplicate this one and call this one weapon name. This is going to be for blending of our animations. We can find our enum weapon name. And we're also going to have one called pickup class. And this is going to be our class reference to our weapon pickup, BP weapon pickup class reference. And let's also store the socket name in here. So the socket that we're going to attach it to. So we can store socket name in here, and that's just going to be of type name, like so. And that is pretty much all we need to do in here for now. So what we can do is compile and save and close this. And then we're going to right click on BP Weapon Master and create child blueprint class. And I'm just going to call this one BP underscore pistols underscore A, just like the mesh and just like the pickup name. And we're going to open up pistols A and we're going to change some class defaults in here. So first we can change the skeletal mesh asset to pistols A. So we've set the skeletal mesh as pistols A. And then if you've got class defaults selected up here, you'll see that we've got the variables right here that we created in the parent class. And let's just give damage an arbitrary number like 20 and make the range something like, let's make it 15,000 for 150 meters. Now this doesn't matter too much for what we're doing today, but let's just put some numbers in there. Let's change the weapon type to pistol. Again, this is going to be for later on when we do the weapon types, but the weapon name is important for blending of animations. We want to choose pistol, and actually weapon name, let's make this pistols A. So let's go into our enumeration for weapon name and let's make this pistols underscore A, just so that it is consistent with the skeletal mesh, because this is specific to this pistol. It's not just a pistol, just any pistol. It is pistols A. So let's change that enumerator in enum weapon name to pistols A, so that inside of pistols A, the weapon name will actually be pistols A, like so. And the pickup class is also very important. We want to name the pickup class as BP pistols A pickup. Right here, this is how we know what to drop on the ground, what pickup to spawn and drop on the ground. And let's call the socket name pistols underscore A underscore socket. Whoops. Gonna make sure that I spell this correctly. Pistols underscore A underscore socket. And before we forget, let's go ahead and create a socket for this to attach to on our skeleton. So I'm actually going to Control-C this name so that I don't spell it incorrectly anywhere else. I'm going to Control-C the socket name. I'm going to go to my third-person character and click on the character's skeletal mesh here, the mesh component, and I'm going to browse to that skeletal mesh right here. And then you can see the skeletons right here for the skeletal mesh, but also if you're using a different character and your skeleton is not right here in the same folder, what you can do is right click on that skeletal mesh and go to skeleton and find skeleton, and it will take you to the asset that is the skeleton. So I'm going to open up the skeleton here, and then I'm going to find the right hand. I'm going to right click and add a socket, and I'm going to either single click on that socket or press F2 to rename it and paste in the name pistols A socket. So you do want to make sure that this socket is named exactly as it is in here in the socket name of your blueprint. So I can then right click on pistols A socket and add preview asset, and I'm going to find my pistols A skeletal mesh, and I'm going to put this more or less into the right position in her hand, like so. I'm not going to worry about this too much just now, but I am going to change the scale because the scale is absolutely massive. So right here with the socket selected over here in the details panel, I can change the relative scale, and I might just make it 0.9, 0.9, 0.9, just to make it a little bit more compact and a little bit more reasonable, and put this more or less into the right position in her hand. Uno momento, por favor. It doesn't matter too much, but I do kind of just want it more or less in the right position, like so. That will do for now. Very nice. And now let's look at spawning our weapons. So we've created the socket and we've changed all of the class defaults inside of our pistols A. let's then go to our character, and we've got all this interaction set up. So this will be called when we hold E while overlapping with that pickup, but now we just need to give this some logic. So actually what we might do is create a variable for storing this weapon that we spawn. So let's create a new variable and just call it current weapon, like so. And this will be an object reference to our weapon master, BP weapon master object reference. So this is a specific object in the world that we've spawned. And so what we might do is just get this current weapon variable right here, and then right click on it and convert to validated get. And this is just a very quick and clean way of checking if we already have a weapon here. And so if we do already have a weapon, we want to spawn a pickup. We need to drop the weapon that we have to pick up the new one. So what we can do is drag off of current weapon here and get pickup class. And this is what we set right here, pickup class, BP pistols A pickup. So for whatever weapon we're carrying, it holds a reference to its corresponding pickup blueprint. And we're going to spawn that pickup blueprint right here by dragging off of this and spawning actor from class, like so. Now, this does need a transform. So it does need to spawn somewhere specific, and we can spawn it at the pickups location, but I'm going to show you something a little bit cooler in a moment. So on pickups location, what I'm going to do is find an add node, and I'm just going to add 10 units to the z-axis. So it's going to spawn 10 units above the pickup on the ground that you're spawning. Now that shouldn't, we can just split that. So that's converting it to a transform. But what we can do is just right click on transform and split the struct bin. And then this location can just plug straight into the location like so. And let's say try to adjust location, but always spawn. Always try to spawn it somewhere. Now that should be working now, but also if we do this, we also want to destroy the weapon that we were holding. So what we might do is just drag off of current weapon here and destroy actor, destroy component. And we're not going to plug that into the isValid. We're going to plug that into here, and let's just take this over the top like so. Keep this nice and neat. So if we are carrying a weapon, sorry, I've plugged this into isNotValid. This needs to plug into isValid. My mistake. That is very important indeed. If we do have a weapon, so if our current weapon is valid, then we need to spawn a pickup and destroy the one that's in our hands, like so. Yes, that is very important indeed. Now, if we do not have a weapon, we want to skip this section and just spawn the weapon in our hand. So what we can do is drag off of weapon to spawn here and spawn actor. It will be add component. Add component by class. My mistake. Not spawn actor, add component by class, because we're using a skeletal mesh component. I'm going to connect this over at the end here, and I'm going to grab some reroute nodes and just pass this along down here like so. And I also want this to happen if we did not have a weapon in the first place. So we can drag off of isNotValid and plug this in here. Grab some reroute nodes. And again, pass this around to try and keep things neat, like so. Very nice. So if we do have a weapon, we just want to skip this part where we sorry, if we don't have a weapon, we want to skip this part where we spawn a pickup and just add the component like so. And then the return value here is what we will set as the current weapon right here. So we can hold Alt and click and drag current weapon out, and then plug this in like so and set that as our current weapon. And then we just need to attach it to our character. So we can drag off of current weapon here, and we can attach component to component like so. The parent is going to be the mesh that you want to attach it to. So I'm going to grab my character's mesh here and plug it into parent. And we stored the socket name inside of our weapon blueprint. So we can drag off of current weapon here and get socket name. Get socket name. Plug that into socket name. And then we want to change all of these from keep relative to snap to target. Snap to target, snap to target, snap to target, and leave world simulated bodies as true. Now this is all set up and good to go now. What I'm going to do is actually just duplicate this a couple more times and actually put some space between them so they're not overlapping with each other. And now we have 4 pickups of the same weapon, but this will just be a way of testing that it's spawning the pickup. So I can hit play now, and if I walk over to this weapon and hold E, it should disappear from the ground and spawn in my hand, which it has not. So we actually have an error here. What have we done? Apologies guys, I know what's going on here. We did not actually set the weapon to spawn in Pistols A. So we need to make sure we go to our Pistols A pickup, and in the class defaults, the weapon to spawn here will be the Pistols A. So I just forgot to bring us back over to the pickup blueprint once we had created BP Pistols A. So now our Pistols A pickup contains a reference to Pistols A, which is what's passed through here, the weapon to spawn. Sorry about that. That should all be working correctly now. Pick this up and it's spawning the pistol in my hand like so. And if I go over to another pickup and I already have a weapon, it's dropping a pickup of that weapon on the ground right there. But because of the weapon's alignment, the static mesh, it's kind of just doing this boring thing where it's just stood up on its handle like so. And it's a box collision, so it's just landing on its side like that and staying there. Let's change this logic so that it spawns in front of our character. It's not too difficult, and it is a little bit cooler than what we've got here. So instead of passing through the pickups location here, what I can do is just get my transform, get actor transform. Whoops, if I can spell transform correctly. Get actor transform, and then let's split this struct pin, and let's do the location. Let's do just a little bit in front of our character's location. So what I can do is grab the location and add, and what I'm going to add to it is the rotations forward vector. So get forward vector, and then I'm going to multiply this, right click here and change this to float single precision, and I'm just going to make this 40 units in front of our character's location and plug that in right here. And now the pickup will spawn just 40 units in front of wherever our character is facing. And if that's inside of the character's capsule, collision capsule, it will sort of push the item forward a little bit. It's not doing that because it doesn't have collision, I guess. It's just spawning 40 units in front of our character like so, because we're kind of dropping it. There's different stuff you can do here, like once you have animations and we're holding this gun out in front of us, then you know, you could spawn it where the gun is in your hand, so it's literally like dropping from where the gun is in your hand. There's a bunch of different stuff you could do with the spawning logic here. Let's just add some animations to round out this single weapon system, and then we'll go on to a 2-weapon system, which is basically we're just going to divide everything into primary and secondary and spawn it in one of those 2 slots. But just before we do that, let's add some animations. So what I'm going to do is head back on over to the Unreal Marketplace. And I'm going to find this asset pack called Animation Starter Pack. It's by Epic Games themselves, and hit Add to Project. And I'm going to search my project and click Show All Projects, select my project, and then select the most recent compatible version, which is probably going to be 5.2, and hit Add to Project. You'll know this one has been added to your project because you'll see this new folder, Anim Starter Pack, right here. And if we open this up and have a look, you'll see we've got a bunch of different basically weapons animations for the UE4 mannequin. So the first thing we need to do is retarget these for our UE5 mannequin, and this is very, very easy in Unreal Engine 5.4. I'm just going to right click on any of these and click retarget animations, and then I'm just going to select my SKM Quinn for the skeletal mesh to retarget onto. And it's doing some things and stuff, and it may have even put this window into the background, so I just needed to Alt-Tab back to this window. So I've selected SKM Quinn, and it's auto-generating a retargeter here. We don't need to do any fiddling around with the retargeter asset. We can just Control A here and click Export Animations, and then in Anim Starter Pack, I might actually just create a new folder in there, call it UE5. And I'm going to place it in UE5, and I'm going to give it the prefix UE5 underscore, whoops, UE5 underscore, and hit export. We can leave this as default and hit export. And then once that's done, it should take you to this new folder with all of these animations now retargeted onto your UE5 mannequin, like so. So very, very quickly, we've got a bunch of different animations that we can use right here. And I'm just going to hit Save All. And then what I might do is try and find an animation that we can switch to when we pick up our pistol. So let's find UE5 idle pistol, this one like so. And you can see that the socket has the weapon pointing a little bit off to the left. Let's clean this up a little bit right now. So I can pause this and take it back to the first frame. And then what I can do in the skeleton tree here is just find the right hand. You can also click Character, Bones, and All Hierarchy to show all of the bones, and then you're able to select different bones, but I prefer to just select it in the skeleton tree over here, so I'm going to leave this on selected only. I'm going to find the right hand, and I'm just going to align this to world space instead of object space, and I'm also going to turn grid snapping and rotation snapping off, and I'm just going to straighten up this hand a little bit, make it nice and level. And let's also play with the left arm a little bit. Actually, I might bend the right arm a little bit so the left hand can reach more easily. So I'm going to take the right lower arm and bring it up. Take the right upper arm and bring it down to about here. And then get that hand again and level this out like so. And then I can start playing with the left arm, take the left upper arm and bring it up. And I'm not going to spend all day on this. I'm literally just going to put that right there and call it a day. So it's better than it was. And then I'm going to click in the skeleton tree here, press Control A to select all, and then click up here to add a keyframe. And now if I hit play, we've got this animation, and she will move around a little bit, but at least she's holding the gun up and she's holding it relatively straight and her hands are kind of on it. So it looks a lot better than it was. And now let's look at blending to this animation in our animation blueprint. So what we can do in our characters blueprint is add a new variable, and let's call it current weapon. We already have current weapon, sorry. Current weapon enum, for lack of a better name. Current weapon enum, and I'm just going to find the enum weapon name. So as I said, weapon name is going to be specific to the actual weapon. If we look in our weapons folder and open up enum weapon name, this is going to be a specific reference to the exact weapon that we're using. So pistols A will have its own animations. So now that we've got that, we also need to set this when we pick up a weapon. So we can do that right here when we spawn it. After set current weapon, we can also set current weapon enum, and we can drag off of current weapon and get weapon name, if I can spell it, get weapon name, and plug this in here. And now we have this variable that's going to be updated when we pick up a weapon, and it's going to tell us exactly which weapon we're holding. And we just need to pass this over to our animation blueprint so that we know what animations to play. And I'm just going to try and clean this up ever so slightly so it's more legible. Whoops. And I might just put that up there. Okay, so compile and save this, and now I'm going to go to my animation blueprint. So how I can find that is just clicking on the mesh here, and then you'll see the enum class over here under use animation blueprint. I'm using ABP Quinn C. I can browse to this, but if you open this up, it will tell you that it is a child of ABP many. So actually, all of the changes that we want to make, we will want to make them inside of ABP many, because this just basically does whatever the parent does. So open up ABP many, and right here in the event graph, this is where we're going to grab our current weapon enum variable, so we know what weapon animations to blend to. But this cast right here on event blueprint initialize animation is not actually a direct cast to our third person character, and we need it to be. So I'm actually going to delete this, and I'm going to drag off of get owning actor and search for third person and cast to BP third person character. Plug in the execution pins here and plug in this object output to the input on this variable, and then select this variable and change the variable type from character to third person character object reference. So an object reference to the BP third person character, and click change variable type. And now this character reference here is a direct reference to the third person character that owns this animation blueprint. So we can start to make some more sort of personalized changes to this animation blueprint. So I can add a pin right here, and down here in variables and references, I can grab my character reference, and I can get current weapon enum, and then I'm going to promote that to a variable and just leave it called current weapon enum. Plug this in here, and now we have access to current weapon enum inside of our animation blueprint. So just to be clear, this variable is the variable inside of our characters blueprint that we created over here. And then we are setting this variable, which is inside of our animation blueprint, based off of this one, so that we basically have access to this one in our animation blueprint. So this variable and this variable are actually two separate variables, but this one is set off of this one. So we basically have access to this one over here in the animation blueprint. And I'm just going to leave that right there. That's all we need to do in the event graph here. We now have access to this current weapon enum. Now I'm going to head over to the animation graph right here. And the first thing I'm going to do in the animation graph is delete this control rig for the foot IK, because anything that you do to the animations in here tends to mess up the foot IK, but we're not going to worry about that in this tutorial. We're just going to delete the IK. And let's start by creating a state machine that's going to hold our pistol animations. So we can right click up here and search for state machine and add a new state machine. I'm going to call it pistols underscore A anims, like so. And I'm going to Control C that name. And then I'm going to drag off of this and I'm going to search for cache, and I'm going to cache this pose under a new save cached pose and paste in pistols A anims. So this basically is saving whatever this outputs here in a cache, and then we can then call that cache wherever we want. So if we just search for pistols A, we can find use cached pose pistol A anims, and we can use that wherever we want. And actually where we're going to use that is we're going to blend by weapon name. So if you just search blend and the name of the enumeration, which was enum underscore weapon name, we can blend by enum weapon name. And if you right click on here, you can just select from the enumeration to add pins here. So we can right click and select unarmed and pistols A and add these pins. Pistols A anims will go into pistol A pose, and then we can select our current weapon enum here, and that will be our active enumeration value, like so. Now, what we might also do is cache main states right here. So I'm going to grab this and new save cached pose and call it main states. And main states can plug into our unarmed. So find the cached pose main states, plug it into unarmed. And then I am just going to put this down here and do a layered blend per bone. So I'm going to drag off of this and find layered blend per bone. And this is going to actually be our blend poses. And our base pose, I'm just going to duplicate use main states here and plug that into our base pose. Plug this in here and plug our montage slot into the output pose. And I'm going to select layered blend per bone here, and I'm just going to change the blend mode to blend mask, because our third person character comes with some blend masks. I can drop this down and I can just change this to upper body, lower body, split / mask. And I can also check mesh space rotation blend and mesh space scale blend. And now if I hit compile and save, what do we got here? Pistols A has nothing. So yeah, we still need to add an animation in Pistols A. So let's go into our Pistol A anims here, and I'm just going to add a state and call it base. And if I go into base, I can find my UE5 idle pistol, drag this out and plug it in here, and make sure to check loop animation. And I'm just going to hit compile and save to make sure I've got no errors. And I'm also going to browse to this animation and make sure that that is indeed the animation that we selected and that we altered in here. Very nice. That should all be working now. If I hit play, I've got my normal set of animations, and if I grab a pistol, it's going to go into my pistol animation like so, and you can see the lower body is still going to play all of the jumping and landing animations and whatnot. Everything is working exactly correctly. If I grab a weapon, it's going to drop a pickup like so. Very nice. Okay, that is our one weapon system with animations all set up. Let's go ahead and play a firing animation on this pistol and just draw a line trace very quickly before we go on to do our two weapon system. So what we can do is we can also store the firing animation that we want to play on the weapon. We can just store that inside of the weapon. So what we can do is go to our weapon master, which I'm not sure if it's open here. So props, weapons, and BP weapon master. And I'm going to add one more variable here and call it firing animation. And this is going to be an enum sequence object reference. And compile and save this, and then head over to our BP pistols A, and over here in the class defaults you will find firing animation has been added to this list of class defaults, and we can search for fire pistol W. I'm going to select this one, and then I'm going to browse to it and open it up, and just make sure that it is an animation for the actual skeletal mesh that we are using there, and it is an animation for this specific skeletal mesh. But you know, you can play around in here with, for example, the muzzle flash and the fire cue positions here. You'll see that the hammer is actually nowhere near hitting when it fires, so I might go to the first frame here and just drag these over to play right here, and then you'll see that the trigger is being pulled, the hammer's coming forward, and then when the hammer hits, boom, it's firing and the slide's coming back. That's better than it was. Some of the animations in these free weapons packs are not very good, but now that we've stored that firing animation in our BP pistols A, what we can do is set up some very basic firing logic inside of our character here. So I'm just going to right click here and find the left mouse button, and what we're going to do first is check that we have a weapon, so we can grab our current weapon and then right click and convert to validated get. And what we can do is just play an animation. So if we do have a weapon, we can play an animation on the mesh. Nope, that's the character's mesh. Don't do that. We're not going to play it on the mesh, we're going to play it on the current weapon, which is a skeletal mesh component. And for the anim to play, we can get our firing animation and plug that in here. And let's just do a very simple line trace from the barrel of the weapon. So first we need to check out the skeletal mesh of that weapon. So we can go to our BP pistols A and then browse to the skeletal mesh over here and open up the skeletal mesh of pistols A, and let's have a look what we've got here. We've got an ammo socket and muzzle flash socket. So what I might do is just create a new socket for the line trace to be drawn from, and you will want this socket to be named exactly the same on all of your weapons. So I'm going to add a socket and I'm going to rename it barrel, all lowercase, like so, and then I'm going to move this socket up in front of the muzzle, like so, and I'm just going to put it roughly in the middle here at the end of the barrel. That is roughly centered, and maybe just, you know, 0.5 millimeter in front of the mesh, like so. So we're going to use this socket's forward vector to draw the line trace from. We can save this and we can close this and go back to our BP third person character, and then off of current weapon we can get socket transform, get socket transform like so, and in socket name is going to be barrel. And then we can right click on the value here and split the struct pin. And off the end here, let's do a line trace by channel. The start of the line trace is going to be the socket's location. And then off of the rotation, we can get forward vector and multiply this by a float single precision. And what you can actually do here is get the current weapon and get range. You remember we created range and we set it to I think 15,000 for 150 meters, and we can plug this in here, and this will be the distance that the line trace draws. Nice, so we can put range to use there, and then we can add this to the socket location. So location plus the forward vector multiplied by the weapon's range is the endpoint of our line trace. And I'm just going to check trace complex, and I'm also going to change the draw debug type to for duration so that we can see it. And that is all we really need to do for now. This is a very, very basic way of making the weapon fire and drawing a line trace. But if we hit play now and grab a weapon, we can then press the left mouse button and it's going to play that firing animation on the pistol, and it's going to draw a line trace from the barrel like so. Very nice. Okay, let's change this into a 2-weapon system. Okay, so the first thing we're going to need to do is create a new enumeration. So let's just duplicate enum weapon type, and let's call it weapon class, and open this up. And we're going to keep unarmed, but we are going to scrap one of these enumerators, and we're going to change the other two to primary and secondary. Now this is going to work pretty much exactly the same as our weapon type system is going to work, but it's just going to work off of these two, primary and secondary, as opposed to pistol, SMG, blah, blah, blah. So now that we've created this enumeration, what we need to do is add it in our weapon master. So let's go to BP weapon master and add a new variable, call it weapon class of type enumeration weapon class that we've just created. And then before we forget, let's also go to our BP pistols A, and in the class defaults here, find the weapon class and change it to secondary. Now what we might do before we continue on is also create a primary and its corresponding pickup. So what we can do is in our weapons folder, we could right click on the BP weapon master and create child blueprint class. Or what we can do, which is probably a little bit easier, is to just duplicate pistols A. So we can just press Ctrl D to duplicate pistols A. And actually, I don't know what we're going to call this. Let's have a look in our weapons pack. Assault rifle A. So I'm just going to Ctrl C the name of assault rifle A, and very quickly while we're here, what we might do is create a static mesh. So open up assault rifle A, click make static mesh, find the folder it was in, and then I'm going to paste in the name underscore here, assault rifle A underscore static mesh, and hit save. Close this, open up the static mesh that we've just created, and then click collision, add box simplified collision like so, save and close that. And now let's go back to our weapons folder and rename this new blueprint to BP underscore assault rifle A like so. Open it up and change the skeletal mesh asset to assault rifle A. And down here, let's leave the damage and the range as the same. Let's change the weapon type to assault rifle for later on. Let's change the weapon name. So we need to add our weapon name to the enumerator. So let's just dock this up here. I'm going to close a couple of these, close the pistol, close BP pistols A, and so weapon name, I've already got it open here. Let's add an enumerator, and the weapon name will be our assault rifle A. Save this, go back to our blueprint and change the weapon name to assault rifle A. The pickup class has not been created yet, so we do need to remember to come back and set this. Let's change the socket to assault rifle A socket. Let's find the fire rifle W firing animation and change the weapon class to primary And let's also just browse to this, this animation and open it up and make sure that that is the correct animation for that skeletal mesh, and it is. So we do need to remember to come back here and change the pickup class to the correct one, but everything else is basically set up and ready to go. We can go over to our pickups folder, and again, we could right click on this and create a child blueprint class, or we can just Control D and duplicate our Pistols A pickup and change this to Assault Rifle A pickup. And I'm just going to get rid of that one on the end. Assault Rifle A pickup. Open this up, and straight away the weapon to spawn we can change to the BP Assault Rifle A, and we can click Open Full Blueprint Editor and select the pickup object, and over here in the details panel change this to our Assault Rifle A static mesh that we created. And if we have a look in the viewport, that has all been changed. So that's pretty much all you need to change in a pickup when you're creating a new one, is the weapon to spawn in the class defaults here to the corresponding weapon blueprint, and the pickup object to that static mesh of that weapon. And now that we've created this BP Assault Rifle A pickup, we can go back to BP Assault Rifle A and change the pickup class to BP Assault Rifle A pickup. Now, the way that this is set up currently, we can pick that up and it will work as long as we create the socket, but it won't store it in its own slot. It will just store it in the current weapon slot that we created here, this variable that we created right here. So let's create the socket and just check that that works. We can go to our BP Assault Rifle A and just Control C the Assault Rifle A socket name. So we Control C the name, and then we can go to our skeleton, and if we find the right hand, I'm just going to right click on the Pistols A socket and remove all attached assets. Then I'm going to right click on the right hand and add a socket, single click or press F2 to rename, and paste in Assault Rifle A socket. And then here I can add the preview mesh Assault Rifle A and start getting this more or less into the right position. And again, it is massive, so I'm going to change the relative scale on this socket to 0.9, 0.9, 0.9. Still quite big, so let's try 0.8 for this one, and I think that looks much more reasonable. We're also going to need some animations for this, but let's do that in a moment. So we've got that socket created, and all of the logic is already there. It's pulling the socket name from that weapon, and we just might notice some bugs with the animation. But what we can do is just drag this pickup out, and we can duplicate it a couple of times and hit play. And if I pick up a pistol, it'll pick it up. Then if I pick up this, it'll drop the pistol, and you can see it's just A posing on the top because we don't have any animation set up for the assault rifle, but it is attaching and it is dropping a pickup like so. Very good. Let's just add an animation in really quick so that we've got a placeholder so that we can see that it's blending the animations correctly. So let's go to our anim starter pack and the UE5 folder, and let's find an animation to use. Let's use UE5 idle rifle iron sights. So if we open this up, we see we've already got the preview mesh there. We can pause this and take it back to the first frame, and we can start messing around with this animation. So let's start by just grabbing the right hand, and I'm going to change this to world space up here and just line this up a little bit more. Straighten it up like so. And I might even just place that into the left hand and call it a day. So I'll place that there, and then I'll grab the left upper arm and I'll bring it in a little bit so the thumb is touching on the sides there, and I'll bring it, oh, I'm not able to grab that gizmo, there we go, and bring that up a little bit so the hand is resting up under there. And then I'm just going to keyframe everything, and if I hit play, there we go. That'll do for now. Very good. I can save that and close that. And now I'm going to go to my ABP Mani and back out to the enum graph here. Make a new state machine. Call it assault underscore rifle underscore A enums. And I'm going to control C that name, cache that, new save cached pose, paste in that name, and then open this up, add a state, call it base, open up base, and we can find our UE5 idle rifle iron sights, plug this in, click loop animations, loop animation, and then I'm also going to browse to that, make sure that that is the correct one, and it is. Very nice. Back to my animation blueprint, and now that this animation state is here, this state machine, I can back out to my enum graph. I can right click on my blend poses by weapon name and add assault rifle A that was added to the enumeration, and then find assault rifle A enums, the cached pose, and plug this into assault rifle A pose like so. Default pose is got none. I wonder if we can remove this pin. It doesn't look like we can. It doesn't matter. It's nothing anyway. You could even just plug main states into, I wonder if you can plug that same, nope. Just duplicate main states and plug it into default pose like so, just so that it doesn't give us that little note. And now, if we hit play, let's full screen this. If I grab this, it should blend to my assault rifle pose like so. And pistol pose. Nice. Very good. You can see when I'm walking, the left hand is moving around a little bit. If you wanted to lock the left hand to the gun, you can use some left hand IK, and I highly recommend you check out my left hand IK hand sway and procedural recoil tutorial. It is a bit of a beast. It's a great tutorial. I'm very proud of that one. If you want to do some sort of more clean looking weapon stuff. Alrighty, so let's continue on setting this up to be a 2-weapon system. And how we're going to do that is we're not going to use this current weapon variable anymore. We are going to basically store the object reference in a map. So a map is basically, well, we can just go ahead and create one. So I might even just change this variable to a map. So I can click this little drop down in the details panel and change it to a map. And this is going to create some errors, but don't worry, we're going to work through all of it and fix everything up. So you can see it's created some errors here with the old current weapon object reference. Don't worry about that too much. And what we're going to do is change the variable type on the right here. This is the key. So I'm going to hit compile so that we've got the default value down here. And I'm going to change the variable type on the left here to our weapon class enumeration. If I can spell it, enum weapon class, like so, change variable type. And then the second variable type over here is going to be our object reference to our weapon master. So BP weapon master object reference, change variable type again. And now if we add a value, an indices, add an index to the default value here, you'll see that the, oh, that's not right. Maybe we need to compile and then add one. You'll see that the first one here is unarmed, and then we've got primary and secondary, and this is going to be an object reference to the actual weapon. So basically what a map is it's a list of values with a key assigned to them. So we can look up what value is at what key. So we can look up primary and what is stored at the key primary. It's all going to make more sense in a moment. But what we're also going to do is duplicate current weapon enum right here. And what should we call this? We might just call it current weapon class. Current weapon class. And this is going to be the enum weapon class. And I'm just going to move this up to the top here for clarity. Current weapon class is going to be the current weapon that we have equipped. So I'm just going to make a little bit more room here, drag my spawn weapon out to the left. And what we can do is drag off of weapon to spawn here. I'm also going to move this reroute node and drag off of weapon to spawn and get the class defaults of the weapon to spawn. So here we can pull up the class defaults that have been set for that weapon. And what we can do is set the current weapon class. When we pick up a weapon, we're going to set the current weapon class as the weapon class of the weapon that we've picked up, like so. Now, to continue on, we're going to need a few functions that basically tell us what weapon we've got and what weapon we're trying to pick up, and what weapon is stored at what key within our map. So just follow along. It'll all make much more sense very, very soon. Let's create a new function and let's call it get weapon of, I want to say class, but I'm going to say type, because we are going to change this system to work for our weapon type system. But just know that when I say weapon of type, I mean weapon of class. So in get weapon of type, all we are really going to do is pull out the map value at whatever type. So we can actually give this an input. So we can click here and add an input, and we can say, just call it weapon type. And that's going to be our weapon class enumeration. So we're going to pass through weapon class here, and we are going to grab our, let's actually change current weapon, this map. Let's just change the name of this to weapons. That's why it's a little bit confusing, because this is actually going to store all of our weapons, all at different keys of the map right here. So we're going to get our weapons, and then we are going to find, we're going to find the value at this key, which we are using this enumeration as the key, and we are going to return that. So we can just find a return node, and we can plug in each of these here. Select the return node, and we're going to rename these outputs. We can call this current weapon of type, and we can call the other one has weapon of type. So again, type is just another name for class. at the moment. We're using our weapon class enum, but we're going to change this to be, pistol, SMG, shotgun in a moment. So that's all this function needs to do. It just needs to take an input, which is a weapon type, and return whatever weapon we have stored in our weapons variable of that type. I know this might seem a little bit confusing, but just follow along and you will become more and more familiar with this as we go. So we can actually use that function straight away here. What we can do is just drag off of current weapon class and call that function getWeaponOfType, and this is going to return the whatever weapon we have stored in our map of the type of the one that we're trying to pick up here, if that makes any sense, because we've set this off of the weapon class of the weapon that we're trying to pick up, and then we're using that in this function that we just created to find out what weapon we have. Whoops, I did not mean to do that. What weapon we have of that type in there. Okay, so when we return that, we can then just do a branch to see if we already have one, and then that's what we're going to use to decide if we need to spawn a pickup or not. So if we do have a weapon of that type, we can spawn the pickup. And how we're going to spawn the pickup is we're not actually going to use weapons right here. We're going to grab the current weapon of that type and plug it into pickup class like so. Make a couple of reroute nodes and try and keep this neat and tidy. And we will also pass this over here and use that to destroy that component. If we don't have a weapon, we can go ahead and bypass this whole section, and that will just plug into our spawn the actor here, add the component. And we're not actually going to set the weapon type here. We need to create a new function that will set the weapon of that type. So let's create a new function, and we'll call it setWeaponOfType. setWeaponOfType. And in here, all we're going to do is grab our weapons map, and we're going to add and plug this in, and we're going to pass through the weapon type and the weapon to set. So we can create a couple of inputs. Whoops. Create one input and call it weapon type, and just check that that is enum weapon class. Yep, so that's already the correct variable type, but what you want to find is the enum weapon class, this one. And we also want to create another input, and it will be the weapon to set. So the weapon that we want to set as that weapon in our inventory. And this is going to be an object reference to our BP Weapon Master object reference. So we can just plug in weapon type here and plug in weapon to set here, and it's going to set that weapon at that key as whatever we pass through here, so whatever we pick up. And it's worth noting that this node, add, is a little bit misleading, because you might think that it's going to add to our map, our list of weapons on our map. But if you highlight this, if you hover over this, it will say it adds a key and value to the map. If something already uses the provided key, it will be overwritten with a new value. So we will only have one object in the map of the key unarmed, primary, and secondary. Each one, unarmed, primary, and secondary, will each only ever hold one value, and this will overwrite it if we already have one. So if we back out to our event graph now, what we can do is call this function right here, set weapon of type. It's getting a little bit messy here, so I'll just drag these out to the right a little bit, plug this in here, and the target is the self. The weapon to set is going to be the return value right here, and the weapon type, because we set this current weapon class right at the start, and actually I am going to just rename this current weapon type for consistency, current weapon type. I am going to plug in current weapon type right here, like so. So we're setting at the key of whatever is our current weapon type, we're setting this as our current weapon, if that makes any sense. So let's also just pass this return value over here and plug it into here. We'll create a couple of reroute nodes and also plug this in like so. We might actually just bring these down here. And that could be a little bit neater. Nice. So we're getting there. We're almost done. Let's also create a function that gets the current weapon. So it will basically just get whatever weapon is stored at the current weapon type. So we can create a new function, call it get current weapon, and this will be more for like line traces, for example, and we need to know what weapon we have currently so we can do stuff with it. And in get current weapon, what we can do is just call the get weapon of type that we've created, get weapon of type, and the weapon type that we're going to get is the current weapon type, like so. And we can do a return, and what we want to return is the current weapon of type right here, and we can just call this current weapon, like so. So that's a very nifty little function that we can then use to do our line traces and whatnot. And we can actually do that right away. So let's go back to our event graph and look at our line trace logic right here. So we're not going to use weapons. We are going to create a little bit more space. And then what we can do is just get our current weapon. So on the left mouse click, we can get the current weapon. And we just want to check if it's valid. We don't want to do anything if it's not valid. So let's drag off of current weapon here and get an is valid, this one with the little question mark. And if it is valid, we can go ahead and do our line trace, and the firing animation will be pulled from the current weapon. And down here as well, the range and everything else will also be pulled from the current weapon, like so. Nice, this is all coming together. So this should work now. We don't have any weapon switching logic or anything like that, but we will set that up in a moment, and then we'll go on to do weapon types as well. So let's hit compile. What do we got here? We got some errors. Socket transform. Yes, the target will also be the current weapon, or maybe we can plug that in from down here, and the play animation will also be the current weapon. Oops. Just trying to keep this as neat and tidy as I possibly can. That should get rid of both of those errors. So yes, obviously the socket, we have to get the socket from somewhere. We're getting it from the weapon, and we're playing the animation on the weapon. So yeah, we also need to plug in that target there. Okay, that should work now. So now we should have separate animations for both of our guns. They should fire and draw a line trace from the barrel, and just before I pick this up, I know there's going to be a problem because we didn't set the barrel on the assault rifle. So let's do that very, very quickly. Military weapons silver and weapons, and then assault rifle A skeleton right here. Let's right click on the root bone and add a socket. Let's rename it to all lowercase barrel. And let's grab that barrel socket, move it up here into about the center of the muzzle, and maybe ever so slightly in front of it. It doesn't have to be exact. That should be all good. Now that we've created that barrel socket, we should be able to grab the assault rifle and play the animation and a line trace from the weapon, like so. Very nice. So you'll see here when we pick up another weapon, it is not hiding the other weapon. So this is effectively weapon switching. You'll see it actually fires the correct weapon, so whichever weapon is active, because we're getting current weapon, it's firing the correct weapon, but you can see it's not hiding the mesh at all. So we do need to just set the visibility of the weapon, and we can just call that at the end of our spawning logic. So we can go back to our third person character and we can create a new function, and the function is going to basically set the visibility of all the weapons that we're not using as invisible and the visibility of the weapon that we are using as visible. So let's create a new function and we'll just call it set weapon visibility. Set weapon visibility. Just making sure I spelled that correctly. And we do want to pass through the current weapon. So the current weapon type. So we can just add an input and call it current weapon type. And that's going to be our weapon class enum. And so this is pretty straightforward. It might look complicated, but basically what we're going to do is grab our weapons map, and we are going to find a node called keys, and this takes all of the keys in the map and outputs them as an array. So an array of enumerators, because obviously in this map we are using the enumerator as keys, so this will output an array of enumerators. And what we can do is a for each loop, and we're going to cycle through all of these enumerators and find if they are our current weapon or if they are not our current weapon. So we can drag off of array element here and find a not equal enum, plug in the current weapon type right here, and make a branch. We can hold B and left click to make a branch, plug this in as the condition, and we are also going to need to check if they're valid. So let's drag off of the weapons map here and find at the array element that we are checking. So array element will plug into here, and at that key we will check if the object reference is valid. This one with the question mark, and plug this in here. We can also duplicate this, plug this in here, and plug into isn't valid. Is equal. So we're checking at each element of this array if it is not equal with our current weapon. So it will be true if it's not our current weapon. And here what we can do is just drag off of this again right here and set visibility as false. So we can leave this as false. We can duplicate this down here, plug this into the target right here, and I will try my best to keep this neat, like so. Like so. Don't need this one. And so this is if it is our current weapon, because not equal is false. So it's not our current weapon, it is our current weapon. And set this as true. Very nice. And then what we can do is just call this at the end of our spawning logic. So we go back to our event graph, and right here at the end, we can just set weapon visibility and plug in the current weapon type right here. And you might not even have to pass this through. You probably could have just get a current weapon type in right here. In fact, let's do that. Let's get rid of that input. Get rid of that input and just put current weapon type right here into this non-equals. And then back in the event graph, we won't need to plug that in. We can literally just call set weapon visibility whenever we want, and it will set it for us. So now, if we compile and save, and we go over and grab our weapon, we grab one weapon, grab the other one, and the pistol will become invisible. Just to double check, we can grab the pistol and the assault rifle is dropping. And it is dropping a pistol here because we actually still have our other weapon. So it's only dropping the other pistol that we have. This will drop an assault rifle and not a pistol. And the reason is we actually are now carrying both, but we do not have the ability to switch between them. So we can very, very easily set up the ability to switch between these weapons now. Let's just do it down here in some empty space. What I'm going to do is find the 0 key. And then I'm going to duplicate this 2 times. And on this one, I'm going to click this little keyboard icon and set it to the 1 key. This one, I'm going to click the little keyboard icon and set it to the 2 key. So now we've got key presses of 0, 1, and 2. And all we literally need to do here is set the current weapon type to the corresponding weapon type. Whoops. This one will be primary, and this one will be secondary. And then we can just set weapon visibility. And because we've already set the current weapon type, and this uses that to find out which one is current, that is literally all we should have to do to switch between our weapons. So now I can pick up a pistol, I can pick up an assault rifle, I can fire this assault rifle, and I can press 2 to switch to my primary, and we are not setting the current weapon enum is the only thing. So the animation is not changing here. So let's just do that as well. What we need to do is, because we actually pull it from the, we can get the weapon of type. So we can just drag these out here. We can get weapon of type. Plug that in there. And actually, because unarmed is just unarmed, we don't actually need to do this on this one, but we'll just do it the same on all 3. We can get the current weapon of type and get the weapon name. And then we set the current weapon enum based on the weapon name, like so. We probably could have set this up for 1 and then duplicated it twice, so it's all set up for 3, but that's all right. And this will plug into the weapon type right here, and everything else should be good to go. So it's getting the weapon of type, the current weapon. We could just use get current weapon. My mistake, because we already set that and we don't need to pass it through. So actually it would just be better to get current weapon. This is cleaner. Plug this in here and this into here. Like so. Sorry about that. But you can see how these functions are very, very handy and make things very, very easy for us. Everything is all set up now, so those weapons will be hidden, and the animation blueprint will know which animations to overlay. So we can hit play now. Pick up the pistol. This one works. Pick up the assault rifle. This one works. And we can press 2 to change the pistol. The animations have changed. Very, very nice indeed. Okay, just before we go on to the fully fledged weapon types system, which is basically the same system but with a different enumerator used as the keys in our map, let's just have a look at making these weapon changes happen on an animation. So let's first just find the animation that we want to use. Let's go into the Anim Starter Pack and UE5. And let's just use this UE5 equip rifle standing. So if we open this up, see we've got an animation where they're just sort of reaching around behind them there. But what we need to do first is convert this to a montage. So we can right click on this and go to create anim montage. And I'm not going to rename that. I'm just going to open it up. And then what we can do is we can pause this and we can look for a moment where we want our montage notify to proc. So I might do it right here where they reach around behind them. And we're going to use a montage notify here. So what we can do is just right click and add notify, montage notify. And that should be pretty good right there. That is absolutely fine. That's all we need to do in here. We can save this and close this. And then here in our weapon switching logic right here is where we're going to use our montage. Just going to make a bit more space here. I would collapse this into a function, but apparently you can't. You can't put the play montage node into a function. So play montage here, and I'm going to put this right here after we set the current weapon type. And this is all going to execute right away, but then on completion, actually we want to set the visibility here. Sorry, not on completion, on notify begin. So when we reach that montage notify, that's when our weapon visibility is going to change. And this is going to be the same for all of these, so we can just get rid of these and duplicate all of this. Make sure to plug in the execution pins. I probably should have set the montage before I duplicated it. I'm going to do that. So I'm going to grab the mesh here and plug it into the skeletal mesh component. The montage to play should be the only one available, but this is the one we're looking for. Equip rifle standing montage. And this one is a little bit slow, so I'm actually going to change this to a play rate of 1.4. And then I'm going to duplicate all of this. Sorry about that. And actually, I do suspect we might have a problem here when we switch to unarmed, because there is no current weapon stored in unarmed. There is no value stored at the key unarmed in our map. So this will probably produce an error, I think, which will be easy enough to fix. But if I hit play now and I grab this weapon and this weapon, I can press 2 to switch to my pistol, and you can see the visibility is switching on that montage notify when she reaches behind her back, like so. And when we switch to unarmed, I think that's when we're going to get an error. Yep. Access none, current weapon enum. Yeah. So this we can actually, on the switch to unarmed, we can just delete this and set the current weapon enum to unarmed, like so. That will remove those errors. So actually, while we're switching, we might not want to be able to fire our weapon while we're switching. So let's start implementing some very basic controls on whether our player can fire or not. And what I might do is just very quickly move all this stuff out a little bit. And I'm going to create a new variable, call it canFire, of type boolean. I'm going to compile this so that I can change the default value of canFire to true. And I'm going to get this and hold B and left click to make a branch. Put this on a branch here so we can only fire if canFire is true. And then what we might do down here on our weapon switching is first set canFire to false. Set canFire to the false here at the beginning of each of these. And then on completed, we can set it to true. On each of these. So when we start switching, we cannot fire until that montage is completed playing. We'll just test that out. I'm mashing the left mouse button here. So I'm just going to turn this down so I don't destroy my eardrums. And when we start switching, he can't fire anymore. And then when we switch to unarmed, he won't be able to fire because there's no valid weapon there, because we've got the is valid on the fire here. Current weapon is valid. So she won't be able to fire there. Just try and tidy this up a little bit. Nice. Okay, let's go ahead and change this to our weapon types system. It's not going to be a huge change. It's literally just changing the enumeration that that we use to discern where to store each weapon in our map. So this may cause a few problems when we change this variable type, but that's okay. It will help to sort of weed out the changes that we need to make. So we can search here for our enum weapon type. So we're changing from enum weapon class to enum weapon type. And again, if you want to keep this sort of setup, a 2-weapons system, you want to ignore this part of the tutorial. We are now going on to modify this to a weapon type system where we have, pistols, SMGs, shotguns, that sort of thing. So I can change this to enum weapon type and press change variable type. And now, if I hit compile, we should have quite a few errors. Let's just have a look at the first one here. Yes, because these weapon types that we're passing through will not be compatible. So we can actually change this input weapon type to our weapon type. And let's just follow all of these. Again, this input will be weapon type. Set weapon of type, again, is going to be, so current weapon type is our weapon class. So we do need to change that variable type to our weapon type. And now this one is correct. What other errors have we got here? Set current weapon type. We can just drag our new, weapon class. So this, we just need to grab this and plug it into weapon type instead of weapon class. Grab the weapon type of the weapon that we're picking up. And here, this, I think all we'd have to do here is grab this and grab the keys node again. Yeah, so it does look like we just need to replace quite a few of these nodes. So let's just replace these. So we'll grab weapons, we'll plug it into the keys here, we'll drag off of keys and find the for each loop. Just these are trying to convert from one enumerator to the other. We can also drag off of weapons and get our find. And we can hold control and click and drag these onto this new find node. And we also just need to grab another not equal enum. Plug this in here. Plug this into the branch. Plug the array element into the find, and now if we compile, that should be all good. I think it was still, the element type was still the old element type on the loop, and the same with the not equals. That should all be working fine now. So there will be a few more changes we need to make. We need to, for example, change these. Well, we don't really need to change them. We need to add one more for our fourth weapon type. And obviously we will need to create some new weapons of those weapon types to test this out. So I've created a new one down here, and I'm just going to make this the last enumerator in our enumeration, assault rifle. And that should be, we also need to change the key press here. So I'm going to click this little keyboard icon and change that to 3 on the keyboard. So we've got 0, 1, 2, and 3. And let's go ahead and make some new weapons. Now, I've already shown you how to create new weapons, so I might just speed this section up. We don't need to go through all of that again, but needless to say, I am going to create a new weapon blueprint and a corresponding pickup blueprint. Okay, so that should be working now. I've just replaced the SMG weapon type with the shotgun weapon type. I haven't set up animations yet, so that's not going to work. But it shoots. It doesn't have a barrel or animations yet, so I'll set that up as well. That's all set up, guys. But if you did want to keep this cleaner in your animation blueprint, you could cache these and put them inside of a state machine. So you could just create a new state machine, call it weapon enums maybe, and I'm going to, I'm actually not going to cache it, I'll plug it straight into there, but what I'll do is I'll just disconnect this by alt-clicking that pin. I'll Control X to cut this, and then I'll go into the state machine, create a new state, call it base. Go in here, paste these in here, and then this will be where all of these are stored and blended. And then if I back out to my anim graph and grab that state machine, plug it in there, it's all just an organizational thing. It's a personal preference thing. If you want the top level of this anim graph to look a bit cleaner, that's the kind of thing you can do. Alrighty, so that should all be working now. If I hit play, I can grab a pistol and an assault rifle and a shotgun, and you can see that the animation is blending there and changing. So I've got a different one for the shotgun, and I should be able to switch to unarmed, switch to my pistol, which is 1, my shotgun, which is 2, and my assault rifle, which is 3, and those should all work. We are trying to switch here when we've already got that kind of weapon out. So if I press the corresponding key for the weapon that I've already got, it's trying to change to the weapon that I've already got. So we might want to put in a little control there to stop that from trying to switch to the same weapon that you're already holding. And all we can do here is check if that's already the current weapon type that's been set. So we can get our current weapon type and check, is it not equal enum to whichever one we're trying to switch to here. So if it's not equal to unarmed, then we can go ahead and switch to unarmed, like so. So I'm just going to grab these 3 and copy these for each one here and change the not equals to the corresponding weapon type here. So if it's not equal to pistol, then we can go ahead and change it to pistol and swap like so. This one will be shotgun. Whoops. And this one will be assault rifle. Pretty straightforward solution there. That should be all good. So if we have a pistol and we're pressing 1, it will do nothing. So I can press 1, change to my pistol, but if I press it again, it's not going to do anything. Ah, that is pressing 2 and it's changing to my unarmed. It's not, here we go. We've got an error here, so this will be good to sort out. I was trying to change to a shotgun when we do not have a shotgun. So again, there is another check that needs to be put in here. And we should be able to do it on that same branch with an AND boolean. Let's just have a look here. So we won't need to do it for unarmed because we, by definition, can always be unarmed. But down here, let's grab an AND boolean. Plug this in here. And we just need to check that the current weapon is valid. So we can do the same check that we do when we fire, which is just get current weapon and check if it's valid. Get weapon of type would be better. Get weapon of type and then check is valid. So we it's not pure, so we will need to run it here. We can get weapon of type. And again, we can just select the corresponding one right here. And has weapon of type right here. We can just plug that straight into the AND boolean. Sorry about that. We are figuring this out on the fly a little bit, but that should be all we need to do. Uno momento, por favor. And remember to change this to the corresponding weapon type, like so. Grab an AND boolean, plug these in, change to the corresponding weapon type, assault rifle. Yeah, so we should not be able to change to a weapon if we don't have that weapon yet. So there we go. That should all be working now. A couple of teething issues there. We can change to the pistol. If I press 2, I am not able to change to the assault rifle. If I press, the shotgun. If I press 3, I can change to the assault rifle. If I continue pressing it, it will not change. I can try and press 2 to change to the shotgun. It won't let me. Nice, and can fire is working all correctly there. Now, obviously, shotgun logic is different to, a pistol or an assault rifle. You've got spread, generally, if you're using buckshot. And you've also got this reload animation, which would need to be factored into your firing animation. So I'm not going to go any further into animation on this tutorial, with the exception of aiming down the sights. So obviously, you would want to play a montage when you fire that shows the player sort of, reeling back from the recoil, and shotgun fire would also have that reload with the pump action right there. Like I said, I'm not going to go into that. I've shown you how to blend between different sets of animations for the different guns. This is already a absolute beast of a tutorial, but let's just have a look now at aiming down the sight. So we're going to make this character sort of lift the weapon a little bit and aim down the sights when we press the right mouse button. So how we're going to do that is we are going to duplicate the animations first and just alter them a little bit for aiming down the sights. I will do one of them with you, and then the other two I will sort of speed that up. I only need to show you how to do it once. So let's start with the pistol. So we've got idle pistol here. I'm going to duplicate idle pistol, and I'm going to call it aim pistol. And then I'm going to open up aim pistol and pause this, take it back to the first frame. And I'm not going to bother changing I suppose I could change the preview asset right here in the skeleton tree. I can remove this asset and then add my pistols A asset. And now I'm just basically going to alter this animation so it looks slightly different, so we look like we're aiming down the sights. I may actually keep this one the same because it's already kind of held up, not quite at eye line. No, I will alter it. So I will grab my right arm, change this to world space, and I am just going to bring up the upper arm and drop the right hand a little bit. This looks a bit odd, so we might actually just bring up the lower arm. So I know it still looks odd. It's not going to be the best animation in the world. And we will just grab the left arm and bring it more or less into place. And then I'm going to keyframe everything. I'm not going to spend all day on this. I am, not going to do a bunch of animation editing on the fly for the purposes of this tutorial, but what I am going to do is alter the other animation to bring that pistol down a little bit. So this will be my aiming animation right here. But if I find my idle, where is it? Idle pistol right here. I'm going to change this to be more of a sort of hip fire animation. So I'm going to pause this, bring it back to the first frame, and I'm just going to lower that pistol down a little bit. So change this to world space, bring this down, bring this up a little bit, and just level that hand out. You'll just see more of a change when we change from idle to aiming down the sights. So these are essentially placeholders, and they just allow you to, see a difference when you, for functionality, when you aim down the sights. Now this is a bit trickier to line up because it's closer. So I need to do something like this. And that will do just like that. I will select all of the skeleton tree and keyframe everything and just press play and have a look. Like I said, it's not going to look great, but you will see a difference when we're aiming down the sights. And then all I'll need to do is create a aiming boolean that I will set on the right mouse button. So I'm going to do it up here with the left mouse button. I'm just going to put it just above my left mouse button here. Find the right mouse button. And I'm going to create a new variable, call it aiming ? This will be a boolean. And I'm going to set this as true when we press the right mouse button and set it as false when we release the right mouse button. Now I just need to access this in my animation blueprint. So I'm going to go back to my animation blueprint and go to the event graph. And then what I might do off of this character reference here is get aiming and promote this to a variable also called aiming. Plug this in here. Now we have access to aiming in our animation blueprint. We can go back to our anim graph, and in my pistols animations right here, I can go in here and into the base, and this is just a very quick and hacky way of doing this. I can get my aiming boolean and I can blend by bool. This will be the active value right here. And idle will obviously be my false pose. And then if I grab my UE5 aim pistol and make sure this one is also set to loop animation, we can test this out now. I can grab a pistol, and if I right click, it's lifting the pistol up slightly into that other animation like so. Nice, very nice. I won't go on and create animations for each of the different weapons. I've shown you how to do that, so that's yeah, that should be enough for you to go on and create some really cool animations, add to your weapon system. Now, as I said, this is already a beast of a tutorial. It is effectively here to replace my how to make a weapon system with simulated physics pickups, and I do hope to add to this tutorial in a series that I'm going to be calling the Ultimate UE5 Weapon System. Now, obviously, we haven't done ammunition or reloading or fully automatic fire or anything like that. This is basically just how to create these weapon blueprints, which are components that we add to our character, and the simulated physics pickups. So if you already have a weapon in that slot, you will drop that weapon like so. Now, I did one more thing before we cap this tutorial off, guys, is I did mention that when we pick this up, it's not really doing any simulated physics, and the reason is because the capsule component on the third-person character is so small. So I'm going to change this capsule radius to something like 55. And now, because we're spawning that weapon 40 units in front, it will be inside of this capsule component and will be pushed out in front of our character. So that might look a little bit cooler. I grab this. It will just kind of make the weapons spin and get pushed out a little bit. If we really wanted to accentuate this, we could make this capsule radius 65. And now these weapons will kind of push out and spin around a little bit. So we're like dropping them down in front of us like so. Shotgun really doesn't want to do it. It could just be the alignment of the shotgun. Oh, you can see it is pushing out. It is pushing out a little bit, but then it's stopping. Nice. Very good. Okay, guys, if this tutorial has been of any use or value to you whatsoever, please hit like and subscribe, and I will see you on the next one.